2024 has come and gone, and there are loads of different awards to hand out for all the different EUCs of this last year. So let's look at all the different categories right here. And as always with all of my YouTube videos, you can just scrub through there if there's one of these categories that you'd like to skip to, just for making it easy. So let's get started with the awards that nobody wants, starting with the Imaginary Wheel Award. The Imaginary Wheel Award is a wheel that has been met with delay after delay after delay, and making the world wonder, will this EUC actually ever materialize? So we have a few different contenders for this one. The first one being the Kingsong F22 Pro, the next being the Extreme Bull Griffin, number 3 being the Extreme Bull Commander Max, and lastly, InMotion, the entire company. Regarding the Extreme Bull Griffin, it took about 4 or 5 months for this wheel to finally come to market. The entire world was wondering where this EUC was at, but they did finally end up shipping it. There was just a supply chain difficulty with that wheel. After that, we have the Kingsong F22 Pro, which started as the Kingsong F22. The world did not like the F22, so Kingsong went back to the drawing board, and honestly, this wheel has been mass produced and it has shipped. So they're not going to be winning this award either. InMotion, the wonderful brand that they are, only released one EUC in 2024, and it was the E20. The E20 was not exactly a flagship release, and it turned out to be a bit of a flop. Lastly, we have the Extreme Bull Commander Max, and that is going to be the winner of this category. The Commander Max should be like the Sherman L in almost every way, except that it has a more powerful motor. However, the latest word from Extreme Bull is that it's not going to be shipped for yet another month, and it's been announced for like 6+ months now. The reason for that is because they're making some sort of major upgrade to it. I don't know what that is, but this wheel has still yet to come to market. Therefore, it wins the Imaginary Wheel Award. There are 3 contenders for the biggest flop award, and this award goes to the EUC that made it to market, but it just did not meet expectations. Initially, the Extreme Bull Griffin was met with a lot of excitement because it is meant to compete against the ultra popular Leaperkim Lynx. But because of super long delays, the excitement for this wheel just fizzled, and then people just kind of forgot about this wheel for the most part. However, now that the wheel actually is released, it is finally starting to generate some sales. So the Griffin is not a total flop. The InMotion E20, on the other hand, is what I would call probably a total flop. Not to say that it's a bad wheel. In fact, I think it's a pretty neat concept. InMotion did pretty much all the things that they were supposed to do. They've done things right, where they have marketed this wheel, they've sent it out to different distributors, they've sent it to influencers, and it got pretty positive reviews overall. But yet nobody was buying it. It's because it's a two-tired but one-wheeled device. It's a strange concept. It's not a new concept, but just like the concepts that came before it, this wheel was not popular among the EUC crowd, and it failed to capture the world's attention. Initially, the F22 Pro was supposed to be just the F22. And when the F22 was announced, it was met with a lot of skepticism and negative remarks from the EUC community and from dealers, primarily because of its really high weight. So Kingsong went back to the drawing board. They added a bunch of power to this wheel, turned it into literally the most powerful EUC ever made on paper. And yet, nobody is buying it. I think a big reason for that is because they just didn't really market this wheel much. They didn't send out sample units to different vendors. They didn't send out any for review. And so basically they just mass produced it and said, here they are, buy them please. And not many people are. In reality though, I think this wheel really has a lot of potential, and I think that it could be an amazing racing EUC. But how would I know that? Nobody's bought it. Nobody's currently buying this, and hardly any vendors are offering it. And for that reason, the F22 Pro gets the biggest flop award. Now let's roll into the good awards, starting with the best beginner EUC. The 4 big contenders for the best beginner EUC are the Begode T4 Max, the InMotion E20, the Begode M10V, and the Begode Falcon. We've already discussed the E20 already. It's a really cool idea. You really can teach someone how to ride an EUC in 3 minutes or so. but it turned out to be a bit of a flop and not many people ended up buying it. And now let's talk about the other three contenders, which are all by Begode. Begode has the T4 Max, which is a little bit higher priced, but really powerful EUC for its size. This is a really awesome EUC for beginners that can also be used by someone who is an experienced rider. That's good for jumping, trails, etc. But it's really a bit of a sleeper. Not that many people are buying this wheel, mostly because it's an iterative upgrade from the T4 Pro and the previous one, the T4. Next, we have the Begode M10V. The M10V didn't start out with a huge bang. It's a pretty nice wheel. A lot of people seem to like it. A lot of people seem to buy it, but it did start out with a little overheating problem that Begode had to scramble to fix right after it got released. More importantly, this EUC doesn't have a suspension, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. After all, it's a small EUC, and it got a pretty big spec bump compared to its predecessor, the M10IV. But the Falcon, on the other hand, that one blew everyone out of the water. This EUC stands alone in its own category as the world's smallest suspension EUC. The Falcon turned out to be extremely popular because it really doesn't have a whole lot of competition right now. That's likely to change with the InMotion E25 that should be coming up sometime soon. I don't know when it's going to be announced, but for now, the Falcon is it for the tiny suspension EUC category. And on that note, the Falcon wins the best beginner EUC. Next, we have a really hotly contested category, which is the best trail EUC. Trail riding on one wheel is a super popular activity, and so everyone seems to want a piece of the pie on that one. So pretty much all the companies have released their own version. I took a public opinion poll of which one is going to be the best trail EUC of 2024, and the results were a little surprising. What should come as no surprise, though, is the fact that the Leaperchem Lynx absolutely demolished everyone in a public opinion poll. It came out far and away the #1 best trail EUC on the market. But we'll talk about that in a little bit because we got something more important to talk about. The Begode Extreme was the #2 on this, and yes, it was a distant second compared to the Lynx, but it got a pretty decent amount of votes. The surprising thing about this is that the Extreme was announced in summer of 2023. So this wheel has had massive staying power. This is the first wheel that Begode has announced that has had proper waterproofing and a smart BMS, and that just totally blew away all the others on the market at the time. But the fact that it is still getting plenty of sales a year and a half later is phenomenal. But the Lynx came after the Extreme, and it has shown to be an absolute trail crusher, and it's super versatile on the streets. Because it was able to do both so well, it's blown away in sales every other EUC practically on the market. But when it comes to trails, the Lynx really stands out because it has such a light weight compared to its body size. It has a 20-inch wheel, and yet it weighs about the same as the Extreme. And a larger wheel is really ideal for trails because having a larger diameter tire makes it a lot easier for your wheel to go over large obstacles such as roots and rocks. Furthermore, the Lynx also has higher battery boxes and higher pedals than the Extreme, and pretty much everything else on the market as well. And the reason why that is important is because you don't want to get a pedal strike or a battery box clip when you're going over some technical trails. So having something that's pretty high up on a trail is critically important. So I know it goes without saying, but the Leaperchem Lynx wins the best trail EUC of 2024. Next, let's talk about the 4 contenders for the best long-range EUC of 2024. The 4 contenders are the Extreme Bold GT Pro Plus, the Master Pro V3, the Master Pro V3 Plus, and the Leaperchem Sherman L. First, let's discuss the Master Pro line. The Master Pro has been pretty long in the tooth, I must admit. It's been around for a really long time now, but Begode just keeps refreshing this lineup over and over again, and so now we have the Master Pro V3. Unfortunately, the sales on that have started to dwindle because it just doesn't have waterproofing and it doesn't have a smart BMS, something that personally I and most of the world seem to expect nowadays for a really expensive EUC. The Master Pro V3 Plus is an amazing EUC, and it has almost the same identical specs as the Extreme Bowl GT Pro Plus, having 168 volts and a 4,400 watt-hour battery. Both of those wheels, the GT Pro Plus and the Master Pro V3 Plus, are almost identical in so many ways, but neither one seemed to get a ton of sales. I would say that the Extreme Bowl GT Pro Plus does have the edge over the Master Pro V3 Plus in terms of sales, but nothing came close to what the Sherman L was able to do. The Sherman L is the only EUC in this entire category that has not just long range, but also has a smart BMS and waterproofing. Not to mention the fact that LibraChem build quality is second to none. It's got almost universally positive reviews, and really it's been one of the hottest selling EUCs this entire year, and it's only been around for like the latter half or so of 2024. So I don't need to say it out loud, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The Sherman L wins the best long-range EUC of 2024. Now let's talk about the best racing EUC of 2024. And this was a crowded category. All the different companies seemed like they wanted to get in on the action for something that is gonna be dominating the tracks. In Europe, the LibraChem Lynx absolutely dominated the circuits out there. And really there wasn't a whole lot of other brands that are sold out there. Yeah, they do sell them, but they don't sell nearly as well as LibraChems. And so for that reason, there's just almost all LibraChems in Europe. In the United States though, it seems like Begode has won almost all the podiums. Let's not fail to mention that around the end of the year, there was a global race in China and Begode mopped the floor. There was no other EUC in the entire place that got anywhere close to the top 10. Oh wait, let's not fail to mention that they didn't exactly allow other brands to compete. Anyway, when it came to a public opinion poll, the Lynx absolutely thrashed everyone else. But I think that because the Lynx was so incredibly popular, it turned into a popularity contest rather than what people honestly think is the best racing EUC. That's not to say that the Lynx isn't amazing. It is, and it's super fast. But there's some out there that have outperformed Lynxes on the racetrack pretty consistently. Two of those that deserve to be mentioned are the ET Max and the Begode Blitz. The ET Max got hardly any votes in this poll, but at the same time, it has won at least 2 major EUC races recently. Yeah, it's a super heavy wheel. It's like 50 kilograms. It's 168 volts though. And in the right hands, obviously, because it's won some major races, it's a dominant wheel. But at the same time, we have a much lighter weight wheel, the Begode Blitz. It has only 134 volts, but because the Blitz is so lightweight, it makes the moment of inertia so much sooner when you lean forward and just start going. So I'm gonna go against what the public opinion poll is on this, because the Blitz has actually won a good number of races, and if not winning those races, it's won a lot of those podiums. So the Begode Blitz wins the best racing EUC of 2024. Lastly, let's talk about the EUC of the year. This is the wheel that has captured the hearts and minds of the vast majority of EUC enthusiasts and beginners alike. This is a wheel that's loved by all for its build quality, its durability, its power, and its versatility. There's only 3 wheels that are up for contention on this, and that would be the LibraChem Lynx, the LibraChem Sherman L, and the Begode Blitz. In a public opinion poll, the Blitz got a distant 3rd place, and it got a respectable number of votes, but because Begode has been marketing this wheel as pretty much exclusively a racing wheel, it really hasn't gotten quite the amount of sales that it could have gotten. Because honestly, the Blitz is a really powerful wheel that can be used very well for jumping and off-roading. But because it's not being marketed as a versatile wheel, Begode has actually asked some influencers to stop making content about how good the Blitz is off-road and for jumping, because they want the sales for the X-Way. It's a weird strategy, I have to admit, it's super weird. But that comes down to only 2 wheels left for the EUC of the year. That would be the Lynx and the Sherman L. Both of these wheels are very, very close in almost every way. The biggest difference is the Sherman L has 50% more battery than the Lynx. With the higher battery capacity also comes a higher level of stability at high speed and a little bit higher weight. So truth be told, the specs are almost identical across the board, but there is one single factor that differentiates these, and that is versatility. The Lynx wins the EUC of the Year award because of how versatile it is. This wheel is deceptively lightweight for its size, which makes it especially beginner friendly for those with especially deep pockets. But because it's relatively lightweight, it makes it very attractive for jumpers and trail riders alike. It's really an unprecedented thing, where a racer also absolutely loves this wheel, and so does a very deep-pocketed beginner. This is not something that you normally see. This is a wheel that a beginner can advance with and they're not gonna outgrow. It's just an amazing thing. The Lynx has absolutely flown off the shelves because of the broad market that it appeals to. So give a round of applause to the Librachem Lynx for the Wheel of the Year. Now let's look forward to 2025. We have a whole bunch of wheels that have been either just announced or are about to be announced. So let's talk about them now. First off, we've got the soft announced Blitz Pro. It is almost identical to the ET Max and also almost identical to the Blitz. Kind of a weird combo, but basically it's a Blitz with 168 volts and an ET Max motor. All we know is that this wheel was shown off in the global race in China, and we don't know when it's going to be produced. And honestly, if you ask me, it just seems like it's a bit on the redundant side. We have a lot of EUCs in that category, and it seems like it has pretty much all of the specs of the ET Max or the X-Way. Very, very, very similar. So why do we have yet another thing in that category? It's a little weird, but you know what? Maybe it'll be the next Race King. I don't know. Next thing to look forward to in 2025 is a full lineup refresh of InMotion EUCs. We have the V18, which was leaked way, way earlier, and I believe that EUC has been renamed to the V12S, or a V12 with suspension. It's going to be a mid-range wheel, and beyond that, I really don't know a whole lot, but we're going to be seeing that coming up pretty soon from InMotion. Next, we have a 200 plus volt EUC that's going to be coming from InMotion. Originally, we were expecting this one to be called the P6, but that name could change also. I really don't know. We don't have much information on this other than that's going to be their next huge release, and I expect it to get a lot of sales. And now we've got the Librachem Patent S. The Patent S was announced a month or two ago, and this wheel has proven thus far to be fairly popular. It's barely gotten into people's hands though, so that's why this wheel is going to be more of a 2025 wheel. But the thing is, the Patent S stands alone in its own category. The Extreme is a year and a half old. The V14 is also getting older. The Commander Mini is also a pretty old wheel, and none of those are seeing a refresh right now. So the Patent S doesn't have a whole lot of competition, and yet it has an independent waterproof rating, smart BMS, and it's got all of the awesome quality of life and fit and finish features that Librachem is already known for. Next one we're going to talk about is a super exciting EUC, and that's the Begode Panther. The Panther has also been a soft announcement by Begode. We don't have all the details on it, but we got pretty much everything that you're going to need. It's a 22-inch wheel with 4,400 watt hours of 50S batteries with 168 volts. This wheel is an absolute monster. This wheel is the Master Pro replacement, and for good reason. It just looks so beautiful if you ask me. But the one thing that I also really like about it is the fact that the pedals are not crazy high on the Panther, and it has hydraulic side stanchion type suspension, similar to the type that Librachem has. From what I hear though, it's not quite as customizable as a Librachem suspension, but regardless, I've heard nothing but awesome things about it. Then we've got a 210 volt EX30 successor. I don't know the name of this wheel. What I do know though, is that this wheel is going to have about 3,600 watt hours, 210 volts as I already said, and it's going to have a 20-inch tire. This wheel is likely going to capture a ton of sales on the market for a medium to medium long-ish range street wheel. Another thing to note about this is that generally The Begode battery boxes are vertical, but on this EX30 successor, they're going to be laid down on their sides, which is going to be lowering the center of gravity. I imagine it's going to look a little weird, but I'm looking forward to how it's going to turn out because I think that's going to really make it awesome for a lot of stability and racing. Lastly, let's talk about the 168 volt, 6,000 watt hour EUC that Begode is working on. I talked about this when it was more in its preliminary phases way long ago. And now this wheel, I believe, is going to be coming into fruition. I can't guarantee it. I'm not quite sure. Maybe they will scrap it ultimately, but from what I've heard, it has ET Max styling. It's going to be 168 volts, 6,000 watt hours, and about a 22 to 24 inch tire. I don't have much more details on that one, so I won't say much more other than hopefully it comes to market soon. If you're thinking about getting the wheel of the gear, the links, make sure you check out this video right here. Lastly, if and only if you're interested in the latest news, leaks, commentary, and reviews of all things EUC, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.